What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Post-Gazette Steelers podcast network and YouTube channel. My name is Noah Hiles. Joining me as always on Tuesdays is Ray Fittipaldo. This program is presented to you by FanDuel. A lot to get into today on this Tuesday. The Steelers still riding high after that statement win over the Indianapolis Colts at Acrisure Stadium. That win made possible largely due to a strong defensive performance. We're going to break down some of the specifics of what went right on defense and what's sustainable and what's not. Before we get to that, though, Ray, we got to talk about Pella. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give us a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. So, Ray, the Steelers defense, they must have heard us talking. They must have been listening to the podcast. They must have been really listening anywhere, because locally and nationally, this unit deservingly was under heavy criticism for their poor play throughout September, throughout October. They certainly started November with a bang, forcing a ton of turnovers, coming up with a whole bunch of sacks, and making the league's best offense look very, very helpless at times in that win. And I think we can both agree it started with the performance up front. Looking at your game report card, you gave the defensive line an A+, you gave the linebackers an A+. It's really hard to refute either of those grades, but I'll ask you, who is the driving force behind those A+, both on the defensive line and the linebacker group? Who are the two guys that you think got them those grades?
Yeah, let's start with TJ Watt, because I think we have to note they were losing 7-0. And the Colts were driving in Steelers territory when TJ Watt made a phenomenal play, came around the edge, ducked under his offensive tackle, swatted the ball away, and recovered it. That set the offense up on a short field. They convert that into a touchdown. And from there, the Steelers really held the momentum until the very end of the game. So to me, no, that was the most important play of the game. But if you want to talk about the defensive player of the game, for me, hands down, it was Payton Wilson, 13 tackles. I thought he had the best game of his career, 13 tackles. He had a pick, set them up on a really short field where they got points again, and then he tipped a pass later in the game that Jack Sawyer intercepted. So he was all over the field. So TJ Watt, Payton Wilson, for me, the two biggest defensive stars. I kind of feel bad about leaving out Alex Highsmith. Here he had 2 sacks, including a strip sack. He was very good, and he was playing on a bum ankle that he said he tweaked early in the game.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people you could pick from, right? I mean, Highsmith, like you said, had a great game. TJ Watt had a great game. I mean, my big takeaway was how well the young guys played. I mean, Derrick Harmon, I thought, looked really good. Like you said, Wilson in his second year looked really good. I mean, these are guys that the Steelers are going to need to take that next step eventually, because like we've seen, TJ Watt, I wouldn't say he's past his prime, but I don't think he's still, progressing. I think we've seen the best that TJ Watt's going to play, and he's going to try to play at this level forever, but they're going to need younger guys to start stepping up. And when you're getting big plays, like you mentioned, from Wilson, from Harmon, I would even throw Joey Porter into the mix there with the big interception. Although his game wasn't perfect, that's what this defense, I think, needs, because like we saw in the first 7 games, some of these guys that are paid a lot of money and have been making big plays for years, they're not always going to make those big plays. They're not always going to be able to be Superman. And when you get the secondary efforts, especially from a guy like Wilson, who I'd like to talk a little bit more about, that's what's going to take this defense to the next level. So let's focus back on Wilson, though. Like you said, I agree, Ray. Best performance of his career. I don't even think that could be debated. And I don't think it would be fair to expect him to have 13 tackles and an interception every game moving forward. But what can you expect for Payton Wilson? What are you looking to see him take away from this? Is it just being a menace all over the field? Is it what he did in pass coverage? What are you most hoping to see him take away and emulate moving forward?
Yeah, so let's just recap his last 6 months or so, because back in the spring, Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin said, we're going to give this guy a chance to play every down. And I thought he had a really good spring. I thought he followed it up with a really strong training camp in summer up at Latrobe. And then for whatever reason, early in the season, his play against the run just tailed off a little bit. And again, there were questions. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Is he going to be able to stand up and be a good run defender? And there was a couple of weeks there where they played Cole Holcomb instead of him in the base 3-4 defense. Cole did okay. But I think now we're at the point again where we have to look at Payton Wilson, certainly against most teams, maybe not against a team like the Ravens where they're going to play smash mouth football. But to me, I think we're at the point now you got to play Payton Wilson every single down again. I think he's earned that based off his performance. And if he can continue to play that way, Noah, he's going to do a lot for that defense. You mentioned the outside backers, how important those guys are. When you have two good inside linebackers who can run sideline to sideline, I don't know if you saw Wilton just covering running backs in the flat and getting on them and tackling. We know how much of an issue tackling was the prior week against the Packers. So, I think we're back to that point now where Wilson has his confidence back and he's playing at a really high level. I'm not going to take him out of the lineup now.
All right, so we got him in the lineup. They have this great performance to bank off of, to grow from. My final question here in this segment is, why the heck did it take so long? They don't get me wrong. They had a performance, I guess, similar to this in New England, right? Where they had turnovers that led to scores. But this was their best game of the year. And this is how this team is designed to win. Maybe not 6 takeaways a game, but something along those lines where you're creating splash defensive plays to set your offense up with a favorable field position. How did this come to fruition? Why now? And why couldn't it have happened earlier?
Yeah, listen, I think there was a lot of criticism of the outside linebackers in particular when they weren't getting sacks and, they were getting gouged by teams like the Bengals and the Packers. People want to look at the contract numbers. TJ Watt's making this amount and Alex Highsmith is making this amount. But no, when you look at it, these quarterbacks were getting the ball out in 2.5 seconds or less. So it's really hard. Unless you really beat that guy clean, you're not going to impact the pass rush and you're not going to be able to affect the quarterback. So that was a big part of it. I know we're going to get into this in segment 2, but I thought playing more zone in this last game on Sunday against the Colts really helped them. I thought Daniel Jones had to hold on to the ball just a split second longer. And you'd be amazed, like 2.5 seconds compared to like 2.7, 2.8, 3.0. It's huge for your pass rush getting home. So that was a big part of it too. But there's no doubt if they're going to be a team that contends for a playoff spot and a division title in the AFC North, that pass rush, that front seven has to play like it did on Sunday against the Colts.
It absolutely does, but they're not the only part of the defense. Obviously, the secondary has a lot to be discussed. We're going to get into that real quick after this break. Back here on the Post-Gazette Steelers podcast network and YouTube channel presented by FanDuel. Also want to give a big thanks to our other sponsor, Goldberg, Persky & White. If you're diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky & White. For over 40 years, our firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. Ray, the tests keep coming. The Steelers, they get rewarded by beating the best team in the NFL by a road trip to Los Angeles to face another really good football team in the Los Angeles Chargers. FanDuel has them as 3-point underdogs on the road, which I think is a fair line, personally, just with the challenge ahead. The pass rush, like we discussed, it's going to need to be better. Or it's not going to need to be better, excuse me. It's going to need to stay that way for this defense to fire on all cylinders. The secondary, I think there's a lot more room for debate on, was that actually a good game by the secondary, or was life just made very easy because of how dominant the Steelers were up front? I'll throw it to you. What do you think?
Yeah, no, early on in that football game, I thought they struggled. The Colts marched down the field, get a 7-0 lead, and you weren't there, but the boo birds were out at Acrisure Stadium. I mean, there was a loud chorus of boos coming down after that happened. But to their credit, they settled down, and I just think they settled into a more simplified approach to playing defense. And I wrote about this yesterday at Post-Gazette.com. You know, they spent their entire offseason finding a way to get better. So they said, okay, we're going to play more man. We're going to go out and get Darius Slay. We're going to go out and get Jalen Ramsey. We're going to pay them, you know, more than $30 million combined. And that's the way that we're going to take that next step. We're not going to lose in the first round anymore. Our defense is going to be better. That's the ticket. Well, it didn't work out that way. You know, Darius Slay looks every bit of 34, soon to be 35. Even Jalen Ramsey in that game against the Bengals, I think it's fair to say that he did not look like a number one shutdown corner in that game. So what did the coaches do? Well, they got to do something. They went into that Colts game dead last in the league in pass defense. So they obviously had to do something. So they played two high safeties for most of the game. They still blitzed. They didn't blitz as much as they had been. And like I said, they played more zone defense. They were not putting the pressure on their corners that they usually did, or they did in the first half of the season. So, it was a different look for Daniel Jones. Maybe Daniel Jones was caught off guard by that because the Steelers hadn't done much of that. But whatever the case, it got them through this game against the Colts. Now we're going to see Sunday Night Football, primetime. Can they repeat that performance? Are they going to go zone again? I think they should, but it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin have cooked up this week for the Chargers.
Obviously, a big part of zone defense is production from the safeties. You're relying on those guys to make a lot more plays over the middle, cover really half the field, depending on what coverage you're in, obviously. And I think the safeties were a big discussion point for this past game on Sunday, and will be moving forward, just a position to monitor because of the injury situation there, because of the moves they've made. They've acquired 2 players throughout the season to add there, and maybe they'll acquire another one here before the trade deadline expires today. But I want to talk about Jalen Ramsey. Like you mentioned, I mean, the man coverage was bad in Cincinnati. They played him at safety, and he was a big part of this zone. Do you expect to see him just remain there moving forward? Is this his just new position?
Well, I mean, if you're the Steelers, no, why would you change it now? That's kind of my approach. But like I said, I kind of want to see what they do this week in practice, and obviously against the Chargers on Sunday night. I think just talking to some of the players in that locker room after the game, they loved it. Like when they were playing man-to-man, they were trying to disguise things and, trick the other team. And, they were trying to get off the field that way. On Sunday, they were just playing basic cover 2 in a lot of those situations. And they out-executed the Colts. And I think a lot of players in that locker room want the coaches to go back to that game plan this week. So, again, we'll see what they draw up in the game plans early this week. We'll see what they do on Sunday night. But for me, why change it? It was really good. Jalen Ramsey playing free safety. Kyle Duggar, who was just acquired 1 week ago today, on Tuesday, stepped in and played strong safety for all but 1 snap. Wasn't spectacular, but he made the plays that came his way. So I just think this, I'm not going to say new because this is the way they played last season, but sort of going back to the future, being more of a zone team, I think that can work against a lot of the teams. It worked against the Colts, the top scoring team in the NFL. I'd like to see how it works against other teams like the Chargers.
What I'd like to see is how they rotate these safeties moving forward. I mean, something that was pointed out by our coworker Brian Batko immediately after the game was a lack of playing time for Thornhill. And with that safety room banged up, especially, like you pointed out, Duggar came in from New England on Tuesday is when he was acquired. So he had less than a week to acclimate himself and essentially made himself a starter. And when they've made moves for other guys like Peppers, who obviously has had some injury issues throughout the season, and then you have Thornhill and you're moving Ramsey from corner to safety, that playing time. I mean, do you expect there to be a little bit more of a rotation at either spot moving forward? I agree with you that it would not make any sense in the world to take Ramsey and put him back at corner. I think he's I don't know if he's comfortable, but I think he makes sense at either safety spot, probably the free. But do you think we're going to see a little bit more of a rotation with those other 3 guys at the other safety spot?
I think maybe you'll want to mix them in a little bit depending on the opponent. And, the Chargers are a top 5 rushing team. So they're like the Colts. You're going to want to shut down the running game first. But, Justin Herbert, obviously, I think he's a top 10 quarterback, maybe even approaching top 7 quarterback in the NFL. So he's obviously going to push the ball down the field too. So Chuck Clark had an illness last week. He theoretically should be back. The question is, do you want to play him? Do you want to take Kyle Duggar out of the lineup after he played so well? And the defense overall played so well without Chuck Clark and without Jabrill Peppers. So, just going back again to the communication, getting lined up right and being simple. Sometimes when you're running guys on and off the field, it can get a little bit hectic. You're communicating with different people, and they just hear things in different ways, and they play in different ways. Not every free safety or strong safety plays in the same manner. So, like I said, I think they'll keep it relatively similar to what we saw against the Colts, but obviously, if these guys are back, you might want to mix them in a little bit, depending on the circumstances.
So final question here. I mean, you look at the box score, and it kind of still looks like Jones had a decent game. He threw for 342 yards. They had multiple receivers with 100 yards receiving. How much of that is just kind of garbage time, trying to not stat pad, but fight your way back in a blowout loss? And how much of that is poor execution on the Steelers defense?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers at halftime were really good for the Steelers. The Colts were like around, I want to say 150 or 170 at halftime. So they played really well in the first half. They played really well in the second half too, but a lot of it was garbage time. Like they got up 27-10. The Steelers were playing some prevent defense. They were trying to bleed the clock a little bit. I wrote this in my report card. It looks bad. You turn over a team 6 times and you only win by 7 points. That doesn't look good. But I put more of the blame on the offense for that. The offense, yes, Noah, they scored 24 points off those 6 turnovers. But if you just score 27 or 30 or 35, that game is really a runaway. So, the defense gave up some yardage. I think the final number was 368. That's not going to do very much for their overall stats. They're still going to be bottom of the league in total defense. But, I thought the defense played probably its best game of the season, if not its best, second best behind New England, and they were the driving force behind that victory.
One of these days, we might see this team play a complete game, Ray. We might see a good game on offense. We might see a good game on defense. We might see a good game on special teams, all in the same 60 minutes. But we're still waiting to see that. And when it happens, we'll be here to talk about it. He's Ray Fittipaldo. I'm Noah Hiles. Check out all of our work at post-gazette.com. Get yourself a digital subscription if you don't have one already, and keep an eye out for our print product. We print on Thursdays and Sundays. This show runs every Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to get this and more from the Post-Gazette. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.